Well, hello, everybody. It's Dave Cooper Live, and this is another episode of Increasing Influence with Miles J. Biggs from Biggs Ideas and special guest, Dominic Ruffin. Hey, Dominic.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited for this.
Yeah, I'm super excited as well. I think this is awesome. We've been looking forward to this, I think, for about 2 weeks now. Miles, if I have this correct, you and Dominic did a podcast not too long ago. Dominic has his own podcast. So, Dominic, why don't you kind of tell us how you got wrapped into the loop of increasing influence with Dave Cooper Live and Miles J. Biggs?
Yeah, so actually, Miles and I, we connected through a mutual friend of ours through a mastermind. And Miles has always been a huge influence to me based off of his impact that he's had in our community and the people that we've been involved with. So I've always aspired and was been inspired by Miles. So when he reached out to me to come on the show and kind of talk about my influence that I've had with my background is athletics. It's been athletics my entire life. It's where I focus majority of my time from the age of 2 all the way to around like 23 years old. I ended up playing Division I football at the University of Wyoming. And then I ended up playing football for the Atlanta Falcons, played some more indoor football in Nebraska. And that was just a big piece of who I was. And that was my identity. Yeah. And then that's where I, created the majority of my influence in my life. And then now like transitioning into the business world, I have a financial education company, and now I try to make an impact outside of athletics, but use a lot of the concepts that I learned from sports into the world now.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's it's really interesting. Who would have thought that we'd have ex-pro, athletes on our show talking about, influence and branding and finances and stuff. But you know what? It's such a major part of anybody's life, whether you are an athlete or not, and what we're going to talk about today as far as accountability, and having an impact, on your life or other people's lives around you. Miles, go lead us off on this one, because I really want to dump into this. And I know you've already had a brain dump of Dominic. So let's get into it and start talking shop here. Ooh, I can't hear you, Miles. Let me drop him out and bring him in, Dominic. Let's see what's going on.
Miles always has technical difficulties.
No, can't hear him. So let's talk about Miles for a minute, Dominic. Let's talk about how we got to get Miles to up his game, with his audio equipment here. You should see he has this elaborate podcast setup, but somewhere along the ways we lost him. Miles, why don't you drop back out and then come back in? And because Dominic's going to teach me something anyhow about, I'm going to kick you out and you can come back in. Dominic, right before the show while we're waiting for Miles, you started talking about something about LinkedIn. Why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a powerful tool, right? Where a lot of organic reach is really huge on this platform compared to any other platform right now. Obviously, besides maybe TikTok, but LinkedIn is a lot more professional. So for individuals who really want to build their brand, who really want to create impact and influence, like LinkedIn is a great place to be. And producing content, specifically video content, is a great place to show your face for people to learn who you are. And I was kind of talking about how the algorithm works. And so within LinkedIn, if you post, the first hour that you post is the most important hour of any time when you're posting that video. And the reason being is because LinkedIn will say, okay, well, they're getting a ton of engagement like right away, which means it must be valuable content. And the people that are watching are like, okay, like we want more people to see this. So how LinkedIn does it is you have like, let's say 5,000 followers / connections. They'll show it to about 10% of your people right away. Right. And if you get a specific amount of likes or comments or engagement within, like, let's just say 10, 20 minutes, then they'll now open it up to the next 50% of your followers / connections. And then if you get another group of another specific amount of people to engage and comment, then they'll open up it to everybody and so on and so forth. So that beginning hour is super important to get likes, comments, engagement from people. And you do that by obviously creating good hooks, being a consistent poster, creating influence, people following you, them showing up every day, knowing that you're going to actually add value back to the people.
All right. So everybody heard that, and it wasn't me saying it. So I love it. Yeah. So Dominic, we're live 6 days a week on LinkedIn as the main platform that we use, but we're also live on YouTube and Facebook right now as well. So we're on all 3 platforms 6 days a week, and everything from this show, Increasing Influence, but we do a ton in the construction world and offsite construction and things of that nature. So, all right. Well, I don't know where Miles J. Biggs is at the moment. He's definitely having some technical issues. So why don't we hop into it a little bit, Dominic? Tell us about your company, what you do, and I think even before that, what inspired you from going, where you were a professional athlete to where you are? What was this transition like, and what made you really say, hey, there's a need for what I do today, and kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer in the way that somebody was raised growing up as a human from a young age, let's say the ages of 0 to 7. That is going to really dictate really their entire, destiny almost to some degree. And how you were raised will create habits for yourself going on and going forward. And so for me, I grew up extremely poor. I grew up in a trailer park. Welfare, Medicaid, like that whole gamut, like being in that environment created a stigma that was okay. And on top of that, my parents, they struggled all the time with fighting with each other about finances, high in debt, my mom didn't really work that much. So I had this entire persona of how life should be. And I created those habits with me all the way through. And so I started realizing through life, playing sports, that I had a platform where I can make a huge influence on people. And so I decided when I was playing sports was that no matter what I did going forward afterwards, that I would dedicate my life to adding value back to people. And so that's where I focused majority of my time, being in sports, creating an impact, creating influence, because I knew no matter what I said, people would listen to me. It didn't really matter what I say, good or bad, people would listen. And as I started learning about the athletes that were playing, I realized they had 1 or 2 options. They were, 1, you're going to go and you're going to play in the NFL, or 2, they're going to go back home and they may go start slinging dope or get into trouble and do something that they probably shouldn't do. And I realized this is because the environment they grew up in, like the environment that I grew up in. And so I started realizing some of the financial issues that I had mentally with my mindset growing up. That carried over to me even as an adult. And so when I was done playing, I had this huge identity crisis of what it is that I wanted to do, trying to figure it out. Luckily for me, like I had Christ on my side to help me get through that. But I had to go through so much trial and error, down moments, depression, anxiety, fears of not knowing what the future had for me. And by going through deep diving and reflection and dealing with that pain and then healing and then going out there trying and not being afraid to try and fail and fall on my face, I was able to overcome all those battles of, okay, I'm no longer an athlete. My identity doesn't lie in being an athlete anymore. My identity lies in something greater than myself. My identity lies in helping people, adding value back to the world, making people. Will Smith has this amazing quote that I love to live by. And he said, if you're not making somebody else's life better, you're wasting your time. And that's really the quote that I live by now is I want to help as many people as I possibly can live a more intentional, happier life. And so now what I do is I run a financial education company and I help people really live an intentional life. We get clarity on what it is that they really want out of life. Do you want to start a business? Do you have a business? Do you want to start a nonprofit? What legacy do you want to live? All these questions that revolve around intentionality and clarity. And then we create a strategy and a plan around that to help them achieve those goals. And so, coming back full circle around some of my passions as well, staying in the athletic world, is I have a huge passion around helping these athletes make that same transition that I did, because I know the pain that I dealt with. That's why I started my podcast that's called The Game Goes On. So I could interview these athletes and talk with them and say, all right, how did you get to where you're at? What struggles did you deal with? Where are you at now? What successes you had, and what can you take from the sport that you played, and how can you make it into life after sports? And so this is like where I spend majority of my time at now, with either just mentoring, talking to kids on how I made that transition, just saying, hey, like this is a real thing. Like there's no need to have a plan B, but you should start making the best version of yourself today, because it doesn't matter who you are. Tom Brady, myself, football is just a temp job. All sports is a temp job. So at some point, you're going to have to be done with it. And then at that point, like what next? And the peak of people's careers, 35, at the max, they're done playing. Now you have another 40, 50 years to do something with your life. Now what? And, majority of athletes, including myself, their career in a professional setting is less than 3 years. And so, okay, now you're a 24, 25-year-old kid. Now what are you going to do? So it doesn't really matter who you are. It is a temp job, and you're going to have to deal with that like subtle identity crisis of like, I'm no longer an athlete. Now who am I as a human?
Yeah. And I would imagine, Miles, let's see, is your voice, can we hear you?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Well,
Great.
I would imagine also in the financial side of this, and there's a couple of comments, we'll go look at it real quick, is they make a lot of money. Like typically it's an assumption, at least for those of us not in the professional athletic sports, but you come out of college, you get signed up with the Atlanta Falcons, or, even if it's, regular, college sports, you're playing for a college team, there's a lot of benefits and perks, and all that kind of ends right away as well. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of benefits as in like you have a lot of support system around you, right? You can plug into anybody, especially your leverage on who you are as an athlete, right?
Right.
Everybody wants to talk to you because you're somebody, right? When you're done playing, nobody cares. Nobody cares who you are, what you're doing at all. You were somebody to instantly nobody. And that is 99% of the people out there. And that's just facts. So yeah, your leverage is no longer there. You're just not the same. So the community that you had, you have to find that elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I mean, that's what leads you on to this show with us, right? Because how do you increase your influence? How do you live an impactful life? How do you change your mindset to a different way of living? Because it is a different way of living. Miles, before your equipment failed, you were gonna pop in here and start this off. So why don't you lead us off to this, and then we'll say hello to a couple of the people tuning in today.
Sure. I want to go back to something you said. You said it in passing, but you mentioned the word fear when you had your whole story there. And I feel like fear is a big driver in why people don't take action and take control, right? And live with intention because they're afraid of what might happen. They're afraid of things that haven't even happened yet. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious your take on fear for yourself, what you had to deal with, and also what you see with other people you work with through the lens of finances or just becoming a person of intention in general.
Yeah. And the acronym for fear, false expectations appearing real, is something that I live by and that I love so much because your reality is your perception, right? And so all these things that you're making up inside your head, they're really not real. You're just making them up and they're false, right? I mean, if I'm about to jump out of an airplane and all of a sudden I just have all this fear and then I jump out of the airplane and now I'm floating, I'm like, yo, what was I even afraid of? And that's how majority of life goes. I have to make this heavy sales call real quick. I have to call the CEO. I don't want to. I'm afraid. All of a sudden you call him, you start talking with him. He's a great human. You're like, wow, what was I even afraid of? He's just another man that's putting his shoes on just like I do, right? So all of these things you make up inside your own head that hold you back and have a blockage for your success. And so for me, like I had this fear of like, what are people going to think of me? Are they going to think that I'm a loser? Are they going to think that I'm a letdown? Are they going to think that I'm no longer of value, of importance, and that I'm no longer playing football? It's like, well, I had all this fear for so long and it kind of stopped me and hindered me from being the best version of myself right out of the game. And so the advice I would say for people is like, hey, if you're fearing something, attack it, slay that wolf, because once you slay it and once you step into that fear, you'll realize that you were really fearing nothing, like there was nothing to be afraid of. And the next time you won't even be afraid and you'll just jump right into it.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. All right, everybody, if you're just tuning in, we have Dominic Ruffin on the show, professional athlete, right? Was a player with the Atlanta Falcons. Now he's doing a lot of mentoring and coaching athletes from around the world. And this is why it's so important, because these athletes are entering our business world. They're entering the space where he's helping them understand financials, helping them understand impact, understanding how to just be as impactful and detail-oriented as you were in sports, in real life, in the business world. So we love it. Let us know where you're calling in from or joining us from, as well as hit that like and share button. So Dominic, we really appreciate you taking time, because I do know you are a busy man, and that's a good thing and a testament. So why don't we say hi to a couple people? Jennifer wrote, what is about an athlete's mindset that sets them apart as an entrepreneur? So many pro athletes rock in the game of life. How can others follow in the footsteps businesses greats like Serena Williams to Shaq O'Neal? Well, that's a tough question. There you go.
Yeah, no, I love this. And this is a great question, Jennifer. Thank you for asking that. And it's interesting that you asked this because athletes' mindset is super unique because they've got real clear on one thing and decided to devote their entire life to it. And so they've created these amazing habits for themselves: discipline, grit, their adversity like bar is up through the roof. Because when we go through all of these things, and people don't understand, when you're an athlete, you go through some of the hardest things you ever deal with. Like fall camp is no joke. You're going 2-a-days, an entire day of 12 hours a day in there, coaches yelling at you, competing at the highest level, right? You have, your teammates, but you're also competing against them to win. So you're creating this discipline and this muscle in your mind and in your body of like, I'm competing at the high level. I'm giving everything I have. And you're training yourself to just be a warrior, literally a warrior every day. And, every day you wake up at 5 a.m., you're creating another great habit for yourself. Over and over and over, you're creating consistency. Consistency is a huge thing that you create as an athlete. And all of these things that add up over time, they start to become who you are as a human. And then when you're done playing, you're like, well, I've already been through fall camp. I've already had the coaches yell at me. I've already had, straight depression, hit rock bottom because I wasn't playing anymore. Like I've had all of these things that I dealt with while playing, right? And now I'm no longer playing. So what do I do now? Well, I take that same grit, passion, desire, every skill set that I learned from sports, and now I just devote it to this one thing over here. And it's typically is sales or entrepreneurship or business, because there's no limit and there's no cap on how much growth you can have. And that's one thing that's attractive about athletes, is that there's no growth or cap on how great you can be. You can be the greatest version that you want to be. So now when you transition on sales, they have that mindset, like, I just want to be the greatest. And they have the thought of like, I want to be the greatest in sports because people love me. So sometimes they're like, I want to be the greatest in sports. I mean, in finance or making money or sales. So I get that same notoriety. I need that feeling. I need that feeling of being wanted. I need that feeling of being great again. Like, where else am I going to get it? Because if not, they might just go into a straight depression and not feel like they're adding value back to the world.
Yeah, that's a really good comment, and I think Miles would agree with that as well, in the fact that they're so focused on that one part, that one thing in their life. And that's the same thing with being an entrepreneur. It's easy to get pulled in a million directions, but if you don't focus on the things that are the most important to drive your business forward every day and block out the noise of everything else, you're not going to be successful. It's the same concept. And I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. And, there's also the quote, and I've realized this in entrepreneurship, right, from the very beginning, the man or woman that tries to catch 2 rabbits catches none. And, when I think of that, I'm just like, oh, like, so you just don't catch anything and you never become good at anything specific, and you become very average at everything. And so the best athletes in the world are like, all right, I'm going to focus in and be the best receiver. They're like, I'm going to be the best receiver and the best quarterback and the best DB, and I'm going to try to practice all these skills. It's like, well, why not take that same concept and put it into the business world? Like, all right, well, a lot of entrepreneurs like, well, I want to do marketing, and now all of a sudden, like, I want to do sales, and I want to do HR, and I want to do this. Like, I want to be the one man, one woman solopreneur and try to do all these, and you spread yourself so thin, so nothing ever becomes great. But what you need is an amazing team around you to accomplish something of significance to achieve the results that you want.
Yeah, for sure. Miles, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I was actually going to make that same reference to positions that Dom did, because I think that's true. Athletes don't say, I want to be great at football. They say, I want to be great at this specific part of football. And so many of us miss that, like getting focused on one thing. I forget what it was, Dave, but one of our previous episodes, someone made the comment about riches and the niches when it comes to content creation, right? And it's a similar idea. I'm curious, though, from your perspective, Dom, we've been talking a lot as from your journey, you were a player, right? If we switch hats now and say you were the owner of an NFL team or you're the commissioner of the NFL, right? Everyone's putting that grit and determination in because they want to win the Super Bowl. There's that big thing at the end that has all this notoriety attached to it. For the people that are watching that own their own companies, and they weren't professional athletes, but they're looking to hire one, how do we create that Super Bowl for everyday working professionals that makes them want to get up at 5 a.m. and put the 2-a-days in and build all those habits in the professional life?
No, that's a great question. And I think the biggest thing that we need to understand is it's not just an athlete, but it's human beings. Human beings all have some of the same characteristics and same qualities. They want to be part of something. And when we're playing sports, it's incredible because we're part of something significant. We're part of something massive. We're trying to achieve a common goal. And it's important for the owner, for the head coach, for the commissioner to paint a vision of the bigger goal for where you want the company to go. And so it's the same thing for an entrepreneur. If you want to hire an athlete, you have to be able to paint a vision for where we're going, what's in it for them, how can they become successful, and then prove to them that you have the tools to help them become the best version of themselves. It's not necessarily just athletes, like it's just human beings. Like we're just humans. Like we want that cultivating human nature of where I can count on you, I trust you, I love you, we can do this together. Like we just crave that and we desire for it. And so if you can be a leader within your community, within your business, and paint a powerful vision, right, you can really have anybody on your team that you want.
Yeah, for sure. All right, look, hey, we got Jordy Putchinger joining us as well. Some of these questions, they can become books. I'll put them up and nobody can be seen. Let's see what Jordy had to say. Jordy has a company called Moducore up in Canada, just so you know. I love the relationship between sports and entrepreneurship. High-performing athletes know that nobody is going to achieve their aspirations and goals for them, but are disciplined enough to know that there is no I in team. Entrepreneurship 100% is a team sport. Awesome conversation. There you go. Thanks, Jordy, for the comment. What do you think about that, Dominic?
Yeah. And I think that's the best part about sports, especially a team sport, is like you are your unique individual within a unique organization. Like you have a macro goal as a team, but a micro goal within yourself to be the best version of yourself. And it's the same thing in sales. It's the same thing in, marketing. It's the same thing in whatever division. There's different divisions within the team, right? The sales team works together, the marketing team works together, the HR team works together, and they all try to be the best version of themselves within the department. Right. Just like me, the receiver, I'm in the receiving room trying to be the best receiver. The O-line, they're in their O-line room trying to be the best O-lineman. And then we come together as a whole to accomplish a goal. And we realize that, hey, I can be the best receiver in the world, but I don't have a quarterback throwing to me. I don't have the O-line blocking for me. Like I'm never going to get noticed. And it's the same thing in the sales world. Like if I don't have a marketing team bringing in people, right. I don't have HR people like bringing in the top talent. Like we can't achieve when we can't win. Like we won't even be a business.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. All right, let's do a couple quick shout outs, Miles, and then we'll jump into some more of this conversation. So we got Rick Hawkins said financial education is an important lesson to be learned. Joel Hutchins, Splash Modular. Here's something funny about Joel. Joel flew back to Australia yesterday. Joel has a game-changing software for our industry that he has done. And in Australia, the military marched him to a hotel for 2 weeks of quarantine. He's not even allowed out of his room.
Wow.
He even said, he goes, if I was in jail, at least they'd let me outside for a couple hours, So, hey, Joel, Ben, thanks for joining us today. Love it. Rick Hawkins, pro sports as a temp job is what I think he meant to say, and that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
George Ryman, good morning from hot Phoenix, Arizona. Good morning, George. Great. And one of the things that we're seeing here that you're going to see on our show is what you're doing for pro athletes is a great thing. And a benefit that just came out of this that I wasn't even thinking about, Miles, is a lot of these people that are commenting and joining us today, they are at the top of their game. They are in a place of making innovation and change happen in the industry, and can be very good contacts for you as you're getting these mindsets of these younger athletes into the world of business. So I just thought I'd throw that out there, because as I'm thinking about this, it's a good place for somebody like yourself who's coaching and mentoring some of these athletes that really have strong mindsets and real vision. Who knows where they end up, right? All right.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, Miles, I saw you were champing at the bit there to ask a question. Go ahead.
Sure. I want to go back to the comment about entrepreneurship being a team sport, because I think that's interesting, because most people think of entrepreneurship as this lonely solo endeavor. If you're building a business by yourself, it's just you. When we said we want to be the best wide receiver, that's great. But the reality for many entrepreneurs is you have to do sales, marketing, HR all by yourself for a little bit, right? So when we talk about the importance of community, we mentioned that's where you and I met, Dominic, was in a mastermind community for entrepreneurs, specifically for that reason, so that there was a spot to come together and not have to do things yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, where do you find those communities for you still, where you find people that are operating at a high level, that keep pushing you, keep motivating you without the coach screaming in your face for 2 days, like you mentioned earlier, right? Where do people look for these places if they don't have one already?
Well, for me personally, like I have a team myself and, I talk with them on a daily basis every single day. We have communication and we have that vision of growing together and trying to accomplish a value. And that right there keeps me going every day. Seeing them strive for greatness, it pushes me to strive for greatness and accountability altogether. And if you don't have that yet, you have to just get yourself out there. And I think a great thing for people to do is start getting comfortable, getting uncomfortable. And that is of one or two things, right? One, I would suggest people to start posting content, because what it's going to do, it's going to help them get their message clear on who they are as a human, what they're doing, their values, and it's going to get them used to talking to people that they're uncomfortable talking with. Then on top of that, it shows them as an authority figure, right? And an authority figure, people are naturally gravitated and attracted to. And so people want to do business or people want to learn or they want to partner with those type of people. So I'd say, especially now in 2020 with COVID and everything, people need to start producing content or create a platform like a podcast or whatever they possibly can do to create an authority figure for themselves. So they start becoming an attractive character so they can start meeting the right type of people and then start increasing your environment. And, by improving your environment, you'll increase your habits, you'll increase your intentionality, you'll start taking things from those other people. And then that's when you start increasing your success and your barometer for what a value means to you.
Yeah, for sure. That's something we talk about all the time on this show, Miles, is creating the content. Miles, by the way, just started doing videos finally.
That's right.
Congrats, Miles. Congrats.
It only took a couple years of me saying you should be doing videos. You get the podcast and the video all at one time. And then you get all that micro content. So just can't compete with my audience, Miles. I'm just teasing. We all win together. You're absolutely right, Dominic. And I think you just have to do it. I think too many people overthink it. I mean, people on LinkedIn don't want to see what you're eating for dinner. I mean, that's just a given. It's not Facebook. It's not Pinterest or, what those platforms are. But when it comes to engaging and having real conversation and having a thought about something, to put it out there so you become known and you start being a thought leader or you just start being somebody within the community is a very powerful thing.
Yeah. And there's a very unique strategy to it too, because whatever your profession is, right? If you're a lawyer, you're a chiropractor, right? People don't necessarily want to always hear you talk about being a chiropractor or always talk about bones popping or a lawyer. Like this stuff's not sexy. This stuff's boring all the time, right? But at the same time, people do want to know that you're credible and you're an authority figure. So you have to show every version of yourself, in my opinion, to build the best brand of yourself. And so the way that I like to break it up into, percentages is 50% of the posts that you do should be specifically directed towards your industry, right? Then you get another 30% that are talking about anything and everything that can add value to your target audience. So if I'm dealing with CEOs or entrepreneurs, right, I'll talk about mindset, I'll talk about health, fitness, wellness, I'll talk about anything that they can take of value and apply it to their life to move forward. And then the other 20% is my personal self and my journey, right? My life on my journey through sports and athletics, stories that I learned. And so you go 50, 30, 20, and you mix it in and talk about all those things. And so you become an actual human being and not just a robotic person. Like, buy my stuff. Here's chiropractic. Right. Here's wellness. Like I see the people all the time, like when they're selling specific products, like realtors, and they're like, hey, here's the market stuff for the houses. Here's my house. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, that's great. Now what else? Nothing ever. Okay. Well, I don't know anything about you. I don't want to do business with you. All right. I see people in like insurance, life insurance saying, hey, you want life insurance today? Buy this now. Like, dude, why are you doing that all the time? You can see you're not getting any engagement, 0 likes, 0 comments. People do not care. People want to be real human beings with you. That's why they're on social media.
It's so true. I'm gonna go back to how I got started in this. Miles knows this because I have a keynote and speak on this as well. I'm a home builder, just like any other home builder. I do modular construction. All of a sudden, I started pulling out the camera on our job sites, talking about our houses. Look how great this is. This is a standard for us. And I did that. And about 6 months later, after doing it on a regular basis, people were walking into our design center and they said, hey, you're that guy on TV. My wife and I have watched all your videos. We want that White House with the subway tile backsplash. I didn't even know these people, and they were selling me my product because I built a trust with them. And the most powerful thing is, it doesn't matter if they are working during the day or the third shift. That content was out there for them to see, hey, this guy's putting it out there. He's talking about his product. He's doing it on video. And it just, all of a sudden it built relationships, and I've never even met them, but they felt as though they knew me. And that's kind of what you're saying. And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, you definitely created an authority figure for yourself, or people can like come to and build that trust. So yeah, that's right on.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. What do you got, Miles?
I was going to comment on that. It is interesting. So yes, I started videos this week. I've been podcasting for 3 years, and now I'm doing little short videos. But what's funny is that I posted one a day because I'm doing them when I walk my dog in the morning. I removed my excuse that I don't have the time. While I'm walking the dog, I'm holding the camera up and I'm filming myself. Looks real goofy, but I get it done, right? So today's Thursday. I still have people liking and interacting with the stuff from Monday, right? So I think some people worry about wasted effort, right? But the fact that it does live out there forever, you never know when people are going to find it, but they absolutely won't find it if you don't put it out there. And the whole idea of increasing influence, you can't increase it if you don't actually start, right? You have to put yourself out there and start talking to people, exposing yourself to new ideas, exposing other people to your ideas. And that's how any growth happens. Like you said, Dom, it's muscles, right? Through the idea of sports, you have to tear the muscles. You get sore and uncomfortable for them to grow, and then you can do more. It's the same thing with anything in business.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept too, because I talk to a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs about this concept of posting video on LinkedIn or somewhere. They're like, like I just don't feel comfortable doing it. Like one day. But these are people that are like public speakers that wrote books that are out there into the public. But something about them posting on social media is terrifying to them. Like they're so afraid of what other people are going to think of them in that moment. So they just stops them altogether. And it's just this very fascinating thing. If we can stop caring what other people think about us, we'll be so much better off in life. And there's a true fact. It's factual. And I don't care. People can argue about this with me. 99.9% of people do not care about you or what you're doing. Like, it's just fact. Like, they have their own issues and things to worry about. Like, even your mom, really doesn't care how your business is doing. Like, she cares specifically, are you healthy? Are you happy? And do you love me? Right. Those are all she cares about. And after that, it doesn't really matter. Right. So if that's your mom's relationship, think about everybody else. Right. They just want to say, okay, what value are you adding? They don't care about the pimple on your face. They don't care about you messing up. They have their own issues and insecurities to deal with on their own. Absolutely.
So the timing was perfect for Rodney Hall. So Rodney Hall is one of the top executive recruiters in our industry. And he was asking that question, what do you tell people that hate seeing themselves on video? And we're talking about, there is a lot of people that don't want to see themselves on video. They don't like the way they look. They don't, right? So what would your advice be to somebody who just doesn't feel comfortable on video? I mean, you guys started with podcasts, right?
Yeah, I would say two things. One, it's like when you hear your voice for the first time on an audio, you just hate the way you sound. And it doesn't matter. You're talking on the phone, you're like, I sound like that? That can't be me, right? So after a while, when you start doing this over and over, you start to get used to the way your voice sounds, just like you get used to your voice sounding on a day-to-day. So you get the same thing with video. You're going to get used to the way you look, seeing yourself on video, and you just push through that barrier and you're like, okay, I don't like the way I look today, but I know 2 weeks from now, I won't mind and I won't care. That's the first thing that you can consider. The second thing is it's self-awareness to understand, well, maybe I'm just not good at video and I just don't need to be doing video. And if that is the case, then use another platform such as written, right? Go ahead and type your stuff on LinkedIn and actually create content, or pictures if you're into that type of thing instead, or audio, right? You can take sound bites from your podcast or talk about it or whatever that looks like for you, something you're good at and you really enjoy. Honestly, the biggest thing is consistency, and building leverage around adding influence and impact around a community is the most important thing. It doesn't necessarily always have to be video. Video is just a great way because people get to see your face and they actually get to see the name behind what's actually happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You ready for a question? Oh, go ahead, Miles.
Okay, I'm gonna add to that one, because having just recently done it, right? One thing I have to remind myself is it doesn't matter what I think about my video, right? I'm not the one I'm making my video for. You don't have to watch your own video back. You're making it for other people. You're trying to add value to other people and not just add value to yourself. You already know what it is you're talking about. You already see yourself in the mirror every day. So forget about what matters to you and think about what matters to somebody else. And like Dom said, to 99% of the people, they don't give a crap what you look like, right? They don't care what you look like on video. They want to care about the message you have and the value that you're bringing them.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I agree. All right, Dominic, we got another question here. This one is from our good friend Joel in quarantine. Australia living under quarantine, I guess is Don Riverman, what would your tip as a high functioning individual to maintaining self-growth? We spend so much time as thought leaders putting everything out there for engagement, but it starts with us building our own confidence and self-worth. Joel.
Yeah. No, that's an amazing question, because I've realized over time, it's like you have this cup of water and like you pour your cup of water in this, you pour water in this cup, and all of a sudden you start pouring into people and it's empty, and you keep trying to pour into people and it's empty. You keep doing this over and over, you just become exhausted, and you start just not enjoying what you're doing, and you're not being the best version of yourself. So the number one thing that people have to focus on is first and foremost is themselves. They have to be a high performer in all areas of life. It's how you do some things, you do all things. So you can't just be a great business owner and be terrible in relationships. You can't be terrible in relationships and be a good business owner, and then all of a sudden your health is crap. You have to start with your health. Then you have to move forward with your relationships, and then you have to move with your business. They all have to commingle together of being a high performer in all areas. And that is being very intentional, very, very intentional about being in the moment, because what ends up happening is people are at work and they're like, man, I wish I was at home with my spouse. And they're at spouse and they're thinking about their work. And if you start thinking about different things in different areas, then they affect each other in different areas. But what you need to do is be present at all moment. And then, it comes also back to people having anxiety, people having, anxiousness. And there's the great quote by the Buddha: if you live in the past, you live in depression. If you live in the future, you live with anxiety. If you live in the present, you live with peace, right? And so having peace and having that parasympathetic state where you can be calm and think and be collective as a whole to be the best version of yourself is super important. So I always tell people they need to start with having like a morning routine, waking up a little bit early and pouring back into themselves. Because I see it in myself day to day. If I wake up, let's say like 8 a.m. and I just get into work, I have no energy. I'm not pouring into nobody at the highest level, but I wake up at 5:45. I do my morning routine. I wake up, I exercise, I cold shower, I meditate, I journal. I am a freaking animal. I'm a beast. I'm ready to go. I'm a warrior, and nobody can stop me. And I'm a high performer. So it all starts with how you start the day. How you start the day is how you'll finish the day.
Yeah. Love it. All right, so we have some hellos from Mark Willie is joining us as well. Build change with Green Step Forward. Mark is huge in the passive house, not only here in the United States but across the world, and he's also a host on BS Fridays. Is our Friday show on building science. So I will plug it tomorrow, Miles. We are kicking off the 2020 New Gravity Housing Conference in Chicago live, because now everything's virtual. We're gonna launch it live, so join us for that. So thanks for tuning in, Mark. Follow up: if we were to look through the books behind him, what titles, topics would we see?
Nice.
Cat in the Hat.
The Buddha. He was quoting
Cat
the Buddha.
Buddha.
There's a lot of books. Cat in the Hat specifically is my favorite book of all time. Right? Yeah, I'm rhyming. A lot of the books behind me are based off of finance, how money works, mindset, and sales. Those are a big piece of it. My favorite book of all time is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's like I read that book every single year because it just puts me in a different mindset for the entire year. And then I love that. There's just so many amazing books. But I do like industry specific. And since I'm in the world of finance and stuff, that's where a lot of it goes. And sales, obviously, of how to just be a genuine human being. That's the one thing that I just don't understand about people is people have a lack of being a human. Right. We think that there's like all this special way of interacting with people and in sales and, objection, all these things. But it's like if we just be a good human and actually care about helping people and adding value and are able to articulate the value. Right. We all talk about value all the time. Value. It's great. But if we can't articulate our value, then nobody can see our value, which means we can't add any value back to people. So being able to articulate that is super important as well. And so, books around personal growth, money, sales is where I spend majority of my time at.
Well, Joel's going to do a plug, and Miles, why don't you jump in here? A plug here for a friend of mine, Hugh Simpson, with his book Rule Your Routine. There you go. Joel's a big supporter of everything that we do, so I'm always happy to support those who support us on the show. So
Rule Your Routine. I like that. I already like the title. Yeah, definitely gonna have to buy that on Amazon right when we get off.
Yeah. Or better yet, let's get him on the show. Have him send. We'll do some book giveaways, and
There you go.
Dominic and I, we can start scattering these books around all of our network. I love it. All right, go ahead, Miles.
Well, I was just going to touch on the book things. That's, to answer the question I was asked of Dom, that's what I do, right? To put water back in my cup. I started taking a list in my phone of all the books I read just for fun. So I would remember what I read instead of just reading it, putting it down, and I could recommend them to people. And I tallied it up because I started it this time last year, and I was right on pace with a book a week. I had 53
Nice.
books in my list.
Love it.
And when it comes to putting content out there, having conversations with people, talking to people of all different backgrounds, you have to know a bunch of different things, right? So reading is a huge one for me. Specifically, though, I don't think I've read a book in a year. It's all audiobooks for me. While I'm walking the dog, driving in the car, working out, I'm reading a book. And that removes the excuse that you don't have time, because you do. That's just BS, right? You can always consume books and knowledge. So
I think we get busier in listening to stuff, and using that time wisely as you're driving or going somewhere just helps you either be a little bit more productive or never allow you to actually relax and find out where you are in life. There's two thoughts to this in there, because me personally, I do video because I can't stand reading and writing. I can't stand. I can do it. Clearly, I've been reading the post, but for me personally, I read a sentence. By the second sentence, I'm in la la land thinking about kite surfing somewhere down in the Dominican Republic. But and if you send me an email more than 2 paragraphs long, I'm calling you. It's just how I am. So I don't know. I'm stuck because I'm always on video. I'm always creating content, and I'm always listening to audio something. So what do I do? Dominic, need your help.
Listen, man, you just what you find important, you make time for. So if you don't find reading being important, you're not going to do it. If you find it being of value, you'll make time for it. So it just that's on you. That's on you at the end of the day.
Yeah. And to the previous book title, right? You got to rule your routine. If you need time to not listen to audiobooks or whatever, then you have to just build that in. Schedule it, as goofy as it sounds. I found you do have to schedule your downtime, otherwise you'll forget about it. If you don't put it in your schedule gets filled up with something else. So again, to Dom's thing about living with intention, you have to relax with intention too, right? Otherwise you do too much of it, or you don't do enough of it.
Right. Well, there's intentional living, right? So listen, we've been covering a lot of ground. We're in this for 45 minutes. Dominic, I really want to make sure we touch base on you and what your organization is doing out there for these athletes and others. So, intentional living was one of them, right? Your website talks about community, impact, growth, mindset, all of these things. Why don't you tell us in your own words, what is the most important thing to you to make a difference and an impact? Like if I were to pay you, give us a tidbit of what is one of the biggest things you tell people that you're working with, whether it's financial, whether it's personal, let us know.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to, Stephen Covey has the habits of highly successful people, the 7 habits. And the second one talks about having the end in mind. And people really need to make this a huge priority by having the end in mind. Because if you don't have the end in mind, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And that's, a quote that I love to live by. You have to have intentional living by knowing exactly where you want to go. And that's starting also with your why. Like, why do I do what I do? And Simon Sinek has a great book, Start With Why. And that book is incredible because it teaches you to really, have your motor for what keeps you going in life. And by having a why, and then having a mission and having purpose and knowing your passions, those will all be your driving forces. And then you can create a plan around how do I get there? And then you'll start to look at like, all right, well, here's my roadblocks. It's maybe some of my past trauma. Maybe it's some of my personal development. Maybe I'm just not ready there mentally to start achieving that goal. These are all things that we have to start peeling the onion back. Like even looking back at your childhood. And I was talking at the beginning that between ages of 0 and 7, those are a huge impact on who you are as a human. And if you don't realize that, hey, I grew up in the hood and I grew up with my mom doing drugs and dope, and my parents split up, and abusive household. If I grew up with all that and I don't address it, I can't move forward. I just can't, because I have all these blockages. And you have to be able to forgive, let go. These are so many things that we deal with, jealousy, guilt, anger that are holding on to us deep inside that we have to be able to let go. And, it could be resentment from the sport. Like when I was done playing football, like I had resentment from not being able to, play in the NFL for 10 years and, the NFL treating me like a piece of crap and me treating me like a piece of meat and my agent and things I could have done. And I had, resentment on top of regret, on top of all of these emotions. And until I just decided to take a step back, right? You have a swing, you have to pull it back. How do you go higher, right? When you're having a swing, how do you go higher? You got to stop and you got to pull it back even more. You can't just keep pushing to get higher. So we have to take a step back a little bit sometimes before we can move forward. And when you start peeling the onion back and getting clarity around what they want, all right, that's where the magic really starts to happen. So if I'm talking to an athlete, hey, like, what do you really want out of life? If I'm talking to a client, I'm talking about their finances and, their money. It's like, hey, like, what do you want to do with your money? Like, what's the purpose? Do you want to have a nonprofit? Do you want to leave a legacy? Like, what do you want to leave for your family? Are you a business owner? There's so many questions and so many variability. It's not black and white ever. Like there's so much gray area, but those are where these questions, the probing questions, asking people about who they are and just being a genuine human being and caring about them.
Yeah, very much so. Miles, take us out.
I'm just processing everything Dom said, so sorry for the startle. That was a great monologue. I'm going to go back and listen to. So taking us out, we just appreciate your time, Dom. You had so many little nuggets of wisdom on this short amount of time. So we appreciate you blocking out the time. I'm sure I can speak for everybody listening where say I learned something, and I hope you enjoyed yourself as well.
No, I did, man. And also I appreciate the pause because I've realized that people that pause are actively listening versus people that are already about to say something in the middle of me saying something. They're not actually listening. So when you listen and then you pause and you're taking it in, like it's very appreciated. And that's also a lesson that I've learned very quickly is that, hey, you need to be an active listener, not just like wanting to say something right away. So, man, I appreciate it. I had a ton of fun. This was a blast. The conversations we had over the last 50 minutes. This is a great conversation. This is how people increase their life, their success, who they are by surrounding yourself with amazing people and having these types of conversations. The audience was amazing. They asked incredible questions. Like that was the coolest thing to be able to like see like live things at the bottom of people like giving input and stuff. So the show is awesome, man. You guys are doing great things here. This is awesome. Yeah, no, we really do appreciate you having you on. And, it's just always fun to learn. And we don't always get to talk to pro athletes every day. So, much respect to you and your career and what you've accomplished and that you've changed your mindset to help others and give back. I think that's just incredible. And I know, Miles and I, we try and do that every day on the show. We don't get paid to do this. We're just putting it out there and talking with people. So really do appreciate it. Miles, man, great connection. Dominic, hang in there. We'll come right back to you after the outro and we'll just round up. So thanks, everyone.